Hi there, it's Peter here again, the guy who hates tomatoes but loves front-end development. In today's video, we will deconstruct a website, but a little bit different website. I've done a lot of deconstructions of award-winning websites, but today I want to have a look at the new Tailwind CSS website. And that is not really a website that will win awards, but I'm sure it will win more developers on board with Tailwind CSS. Okay, so the end goal, I'm sure, of the site is to convince undecided developers to use Tailwind, and I think it does a pretty good job. And in this video, we will just have a look at the site and deconstruct how it was created and how actually Tailwind was used on this site. And here it is. This is the new Tailwind CSS website. As you can see, it's pretty simple in terms of the layout, pretty simple in terms of the white space. And if you are completely new to Tailwind, then Tailwind is a utility-first CSS framework, which means that in terms of writing CSS, you're not writing CSS in your style sheet. You are adding classes directly to the HTML elements in your markup. So whether you use Vue.js, React.js, doesn't really matter. In any of these frameworks, you have access to your markup and to your classes, and that's where you are adding them to style it. Okay, so hopefully you already have some experience with Tailwind. If not, then check out the Playground. They have a great play.tailwindcss, which is a great place to take it for the spin, see how the classes are affecting the final design. So Playground would be the first step where you should get familiar with it. Now let's get back to the Tailwind website, and this has been released today, I believe. And that's why maybe some things are a little bit buggy. First time I checked it on my phone was in the morning, and some of the animations were not as smooth. So if it's breaking for you on mobile as well, make sure you look at it on desktop first, because on desktop it's really nice. And just to get the bugs out of the way, the search at the top didn't really work for me. Apparently it's indexing the new content of the site, so hopefully that's gonna be fixed by the time you're watching this video. And the whole site has been built with Next.js for the background, for the core. So Next.js and React is behind the scenes, and of course Tailwind CSS is used for the styling. So if you inspect it, you'll see that every element on the page has a bunch of CSS classes on it. Okay, so that if you are new to Tailwind, you will look at it and you will say, wow, this is a mess, this is hard to read. But trust me, I've been there as well. Once you get used to it and you figure out how to read the classes, it's actually very simple, and it actually makes the responsiveness, the way you're writing media queries, much more simpler than your traditional style sheet. So if you are at the start of your Tailwind CSS journey, hang in there. I've been there a few months ago, and now I'm very comfortable writing the classes themselves. So hang in there, it will be worth it. While we're talking about this new site, one of the new features in Tailwind 2.0 is the ring feature, which lets you set this outline or border, and it makes it very consistent across browsers and across elements as well. So if you would inspect this element that lets you copy how to install Tailwind, we should see the ring in action. This is the element, and it should have some ring focus. So on focus, there is a ring 2, which gives it, I think it's 2 pixels wide ring. And the good thing about this is that it's all baked into Tailwind CSS, so you don't have to do all this on your own. And this is a bunch of classes applied to it. But the main thing is, for you as a developer, you just apply focus ring 2 to get the nice outline when that input is in focus. Okay, so then you can have also focus ring offset, and I believe that's the darker border is offset by 2 pixels, and then the color of the offset is white, and a ring gray is the main one. So there is a white 2 pixels offset, then 2 pixels gray border around it. And as I said, writing this in your own style sheet would take you a lot of time, take you a lot of headaches jumping through browsers. So that's what Tailwind makes very easy for you to just use simple classes once you get to know them. And then there is a bunch of CSS applied to it. And that's what makes it so fast. So instead of you reinventing the wheel all the time, you are learning Tailwind CSS specific classes to achieve a specific effect. One thing I wish there was on this click to clipboard, once I click on it, it should maybe animate to green or something telling me that it's been copied to clipboard. It definitely works. So if I paste it in, I've got it there, but it would be nice to have the validation. Okay, now it's copied in your clipboard. So turning it into green would be a nice addition. And if I refresh the page, I think this has some animation while the unstyled content is building. And this is a great way, again, how to showcase how the classes are applying to final design. So in terms of interactivity and showcasing how Tailwind works, this hero demo is a great way to do it. And it's used throughout the site as well. Okay, so even when you resize it, you see how it affects the final design and perfectly demonstrates how Tailwind works and how it affects the final design. So let's go back, let's go down, let's scroll down. A few words by Adam, the creator of Tailwind. Then there is this section with testimonials, and I like how you can actually scroll through it, but the problem for me is I can't actually drag it and just skim through it a little bit faster. But at the moment, I can't really pause it and scroll through it on my own. I have to wait for each of them to go in. So I think there should be, this is definitely some usability issue. I would like to quickly skim through all of them on my own without waiting for them to auto scroll. But nevertheless, some quotes from developers that might have not used Tailwind for a long time, and now they convinced that the Tailwind is the way to go. Okay, especially when you're working on application, something with components and something which will be there long term. Tailwind makes it easier to revisit the project, remove stuff, and don't feel like you're leaving a lot of CSS behind. Okay, so that's the testimonial section, and then there is quite a few sections which follow the same pattern. And let's go, for example, to this one. Okay, build whatever you want seriously. Okay, there's few tabs, and what I really like, it showcases again how the same markup can be styled very easily with Tailwind to look completely different. And the good thing about this is if you would take this markup and paste it inside of the playground, you would see exactly the same styles, because by copying the HTML, you're also copying all the styles with it. So if we copy this and paste it inside of the playground, we should see the same design. Okay, so that's the other benefit of having the styles connected to HTML. It's much easier to reuse it. And of course, the only thing is missing is the image. But you get the point that the styles are traveling with the HTML. Wherever you put it, it has always styles attached to it. Okay, so very elegant way how to, and I think they use framer motion to actually switch between the different views, between the different classes. So very nice interactivity as well. And what I also like, if you look at it, the new classes coming in are highlighted, are pulsing from the different background to the current one. Okay, so there is some interactivity in the classes as well. And some of the other demos, they have also, there was highlighted classes. Here it is. So some of the classes are highlighted, and I think in the markdown, in the content that serves these components, they have used the two asterisks before and after of the 64 width to highlight it, which I quite like it as well. Sometimes you have these syntax highlighters that highlight the whole line or block of code, and I haven't seen many where only few words of only the relevant classes or attributes are marked. Very nice way. So if I go to the color, you'll see that the color is highlighted and so on. Okay, so very cool way, again, practical way how to showcase what Tailwind CSS does. And one of the selling points, or one of the features always highlighted with Tailwind, is the consistent color shading. And in the new version of Tailwind CSS, there is more colors, more shades, and also more, the colors are now using also different warmth. Okay, so I think in the whites, let's go to colors. So these are the different colors, but there are also color shades from cooler to warmer. Where is it? Let me find it. Here it is. Here is the cool all the way to warm. Okay, so you can have different, not just different shades of gray, but different, what is it, the word, different saturation, is it? I don't know what is it, but I know that you can have different warmth or coolness of a color. Okay, so color schemes are very easy to keep consistent between elements, and that's one of the reasons why Tailwind lets you create all your color schemes and reuse them instead of you figuring out, oh, what color to add to this. You have predefined set of colors and you just reuse them, because inside of VS Code you actually get this auto completion, so you can't never add a random color. You always just reuse something that has been predefined. Okay, so that keeps the style sheet and the colors consistent. Typography as well, shadows, you can choose between small, from small all the way to the 2XL to the large ones. And sizing, in the new version, they've added a bunch of small sizing. So at the bottom of the scale and at the top of the scale. So there's a wider scale of styling that applies to font sizes as well and opacity. So it's more flexible in the latest CSS, or in the latest Tailwind CSS. Tiny in production. So when you finish working on your project, Tailwind CSS actually removes all the unused classes. So while you're working on it, Tailwind generates a lot of classes for you, and then only based on your markup, that's what the CSS will be bundled in the final style sheet. Okay, so anything unused will be purged away. And here is the example. If I refresh the page and go to this section again, you'll see that the production build is removing everything and only 8.7 kilobytes are left. I'm not sure if this is related to this page overall or if it's just a marketing trick, but 160,000 of line of CSS has been removed, which is a big saving, and 8.7 kilobytes, that is pretty small style sheet, to be honest. Okay, so that's how they're showcasing the tiny production build. And responsive, one of the cool features of Tailwind CSS that I really like is how easily you can build your responsive components. Okay, so anytime you want to, anything without any prefix will apply to the mobile first breakpoint, and then anything, let's find one. Okay, I need to drag it to actually see it in action. Here you can see that there is the SM, which is a small breakpoint, and all these styles will be applied only in the small breakpoint. So if I go back to the small one or back to the mobile first breakpoint, none of these classes are applied. And the MD will be only applied when I go all the way to the medium breakpoint. Okay, so very easily you can create responsive components instead of you going to a style sheet, creating media queries on your own, and that could get messy very quickly. That's why I love Tailwind CSS. Just for the responsiveness, it makes it so easy with only few classes like this. Okay, so of course this is more complex component with multiple elements on it, but this is a great demo that showcases how the classes are applied at a different breakpoint, and that's what makes the card of the house of the beach house in Collingwood scale up or scale down. Very cool demo as well. As I said, all these demos, all these animated demos were created using Framer Motion. So if you're thinking about some animations in terms of components and layouts, Framer Motion might be the way to go. Hover state, focus states, another feature that I'm still playing with and I'm still learning as well. Of course, there is a hover state. When you hover over element, you use the hover variant to change the text or border, whatever that is. Then there is something called group hover. So when you hover over a whole group, which one is using the hover group? So button, does this have a group? Yeah, this has a group as well. So when you hover over, you can change the elements inside of that whole group. Okay, so you can change the SVG as well as the text as well. So group hovers are used for if you have a block of content, and when you hover over the block, you want the things inside of it change, and for that the group hovers are used. Here they are in action as well. You have a little card with multiple elements in it, and you want to change the borders, maybe the colors of each of them, and for that you would use the group hover. And then they have also something called focus within. So sometimes you might have again div with input in it, and when you hover over or when you focus within the input, which means within the div itself, it can highlight the parent container, or it can change its border, outline, whatever you define. So that's where the focus within is used. Very handy feature. And in the last version of Tailwind CSS 2.0, they also released new form component. So let's see if we can find the release notes. Search for form. Form control, user-friendly. There is a new custom forms from Tailwind, which makes it very easy to style components consistently across browsers using the utility first classes. And here is it in action. Okay, so there should be a demo. Let's find the demo. Where is the demo? I thought there was a link to a demo. This is not a demo, is it? This has changed since I looked at it, actually, to be honest. When I looked at it, there was a big form with all this. It wasn't broken down into the markup and little content like this. So you can see this has changed since I looked at it before I started recording. So I'm a little bit surprised I'm seeing a different page, but it showcases how you can style radio buttons, what is the markup for it, what are the classes for it, changing size as well. Okay, that's cool. And here how you can customize it. Okay, so this is the Tailwind config where you can customize the input, select checkbox, and so on. And here you're registering the plugin. Okay, so Tailwind custom forms plugin, definitely one thing that I want to look into, because let's be honest, forms are painful, forms are a nightmare to style, and you're always reinventing the wheel on every single project. So thumbs up for the Tailwind CSS custom form plugin. Definitely worth checking out. And what's this worried about duplication? Okay, the first time I tried to use Tailwind, I used the apply. Apply is the directive where you can chain multiple classes and then reapply it to the same elements. And what I like about Tailwind CSS, actually, it forces you to break down your UI into components. Okay, so if you see yourself repeating a lot of classes, then you would break it down into a component, and then inside of in this example, nav item, that's the only place where all these classes are applied. Okay, so if you have multiple elements, then you probably need to loop over them and only generate one component multiple times, and that's how you can remove the duplication of the same declarations. Okay, so I like that as well. And here is example of conditional classes applied to this link. If it's active, there is a border and text color change. This is using the inline conditional classes, which can work with one class or two, but anything bigger or multiple conditions, you would end up with a lot of these inline styling elements or classes, conditional classes. I prefer to use class names. So you would import class name into this component, and then just before the return statement, you would create your link class and have anything that needs to be on that link by default would be set to true, and then all the other classes would just use this condition, okay, is active. So I like to use the class names module for it, makes it a little bit easier to read, and only if you have one or two classes, you can use the inline conditional classes rendering. Okay, as you can see, Tailwind CSS works with React, Vue, Blade. It doesn't really matter what project you're working on. Every time you have access to the templates, then Tailwind makes it easy to style. What's this one? Anything apply directive to extract repeated utility. Yes, so this is a new feature in Tailwind 2.0. The hover did not used to work, and now you can have in the apply also hover. This section doesn't cover it or doesn't talk about that feature, but if you would have primary and you would try in a previous version of Tailwind add a hover state here, it wouldn't work, but in the latest one it does. Okay, so this talks about framework keep old school. Yes, if you prefer the old school way, you define this in a style sheet and then you define or reuse these classes inside of the markup. I prefer this at the start before I got my head around how Tailwind works, but at the moment I actually stopped using this and I'm only creating new components with the inline classes inside of them. But if you are new to Tailwind, you probably will look for this first and then you realize, okay, I don't need this. Let's write the classes directly in the components themselves. And dark mode, another new feature of Tailwind CSS is a dark mode. Dark mode is useful because it lets you, and I actually tried this and I've done this a few times as well. As you know, people read websites at different times, different lighting scenarios. So to give them the option to have a light or dark mode is a great way. And Tailwind makes it easy. It lets you either define top level dark class in your own HTML, or you can find out what the user prefers. And if he prefers darker interface, then you just render your CSS again, just with simply using the dark variant. Okay, so you style everything for the dark. And then if the user have this setting set to true, to the dark mode to be true, then all your dark classes will apply. So very simple way. As I said, you can either tap in to the user browser setting or OS settings, or you can just define the class manually yourself. Okay, so I think they have a more detailed explanation how to actually make it work. In the config, you just set dark mode media. So this is based on the user settings. If he prefers the color scheme dark, then the dark variants would apply. Or you can define your own classes. This is the dark mode set with the class, and then you set class dark on the HTML or anywhere on the parent element. Okay, and then the dark variant would apply. So very handy way how to add dark mode to your website. That's a new feature in the 2.0. Extend it, tweak it, change it. I think this one showcases how you can extend it in the style sheet. You can have your own fonts, your own different colors, different color schemes. And if you search, if you want to generate this color scheme, there is a Tailwind CSS color generator. And whatever color you paste in, it will then generate the rest of them. Okay, so here you can get the custom color scheme. So if you have a primary color, it will generate all the other shades for you, and then you just copy this object to your Tailwind config. So very handy way. And what else? Cutting edge is our comfort zone. One thing definitely Tailwind is not scared of is to bring in all the new features of CSS and dump the old one. And I think in the last version of 2.0, they removed IE11 support. So IE11 is not supported anymore. And it just shows how Tailwind is thinking ahead, and to move forward, they had to part ways with IE11, so no more IE11 support, which is obviously stripping down a lot of the code base, a lot of the unnecessary polyfills for Tailwind. So the files will be much smaller coming your way. And of course, world-class integration. When you enable the auto-completion, the IntelliSense gives you nice auto-completion hints about all the colors, about the fonts, anything that you are applying to your elements. You have a nice auto-completion. The only thing I don't like at the moment is if I mistype it, I have to delete the whole word, then make a space to actually get the auto-completion. Okay, so I find myself mistyping it, then I'm losing the auto-completion. I have to delete the whole word, backspace few times before I get the auto-completion again. But that's a small thing. Overall, I feel much more productive using Tailwind than the traditional CSS. And ready-made components, Tailwind UI, haven't used that. Definitely something to look for if you want a library of pre-made components. And that's pretty much it. So this is the new website, new Tailwind 2.0. Very cool website, how to showcase how the CSS framework works, what are the new features, and how to use it. Perfect demonstration. As I said, it's not an award-winning website, but it definitely will bring in more developers, will raise the awareness of Tailwind CSS, and I'm sure it will convince some of you to try it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this deconstruction. Alrighty, so this was the Tailwind new website, Tailwind CSS new website, and some of the new features in the Tailwind 2.0 highlighted. Hopefully you've enjoyed this non-traditional deconstruction. As I said, this website is not really award-winning, and there's no need for it. It definitely will bring in more awareness about Tailwind CSS. It will convince some of you or some undecided developers to give Tailwind CSS a try. So impressive work from the Tailwind CSS team. Congrats on the new launch 2.0 and on the beautiful website. As I said, one thing with the search is bothering me at the moment. Hopefully that's gonna get fixed once the new content gets indexed, because I find switching between the docs quite often, especially at the start when you're searching for the right class, the search is kind of necessary for it. So hopefully that's gonna get fixed soon, but beautiful demonstration of how changing the classes affects the design in a practical way. So hopefully you've enjoyed this deconstruction. If you did, let me know in the comments. Have you used Tailwind? Are you planning to learn it this year or next year? Very curious to know about. And if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Until next time, happy coding!